الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبع نهجهم إلى يوم الدين. Inshallah, we are going to proceed with our session, of which we are discussing about Hadith Terminology. So in our previous session, we discussed about Al-Mutawatir, that is viral. So today our point of discussion is Al-Ahad. As I mentioned earlier that based on the narration, you can classify the narrations in order to verify. For verification of a narration, there would be a need of classification, as how it happens in the taxonomy. So this is one of the basic ways. So based on the narration, if you are talking about al-khabar or you are talking about hadith, so for you to confirm a kind of narration, you need to classify. You need to isolate some of the parameters. And one of the basic classification in narration or al-khabar, or you can say al-athar or al-hadith, is that there is a kind of narration that become viral. The one that became viral, which is known as al-mutawatir. I mean, it came from different narration or different narrators. Many reporters narrated that kind of narration. And there is al-ahad, the one that is not viral, the one that came either from, that is a kind of familiarized narration, but it is not up to the level of that it doesn't become viral. Suppose if I ask you a kind of question between Fir'aun and Adolf Hitler, which one is the most viral? You can say Fir'aun is viral, for example, and his actions also are viral. So likewise, Adolf Hitler is famous, but his actions are not viral, for example. So with this, you will be able to differentiate. So there is need for differentiation in some of the issues. So likewise in a narration, before confirming the position of a narration, you may need to classify. So based on the terminology, if we say al-ahad, meaning a kind of narration that is not viral. So this is the basic point of our discussion today. Our point of discussion is al-ahad. We will discuss about the definition of al-ahad and we will discuss about its classification. So its classification can be categorized into two. One of the classification is based on the based upon the pathway that it came to us. And one of the classification is based on the merit, based on level or the position of that narration. So a particular narration can have a merit. It can have the pathways, because it doesn't come to us directly or it doesn't come to you directly. There will be a way that came to you, for example. So by that you will be able to differentiate. Suppose, for example, if you had a meal, the meal contained, or you had a kind of feast. You attend a kind of feast, and you ate a particular meal. So in that meal, there would be water, there would be ingredients, there would be vegetables, and etc. etc. So for you to describe the food to other person, you need to mention all those kind of items that were included in that particular dish, in that particular feast, in that particular meal. So that there is need for enumeration. You must enumerate the ways, the pathway. How do you bring this story or this news or this narration to the people? So before I get a narration, or before I consider it as a kind of authentic one, I have to get the enumeration. Based on the enumerations, I will be able to classify whether I get the enumeration, highlight the ways, the pathways that it arrived to us, and based on that, I will be able to know also the position of that kind of narration group, from where it was sourced, for example. Is it a kind of that is a genuine one or not? So these are our first, our point of discussion. If you can recall, we are going to the book of Mustalah al-Hadith, Hadith Terminology by Sheikh Muhammad bin Salih al-Husaymin, rahimahullah. So this is our basic point of discussion. Al-Ahad, the narration that is not viral. So as I mentioned yesterday, or in our previous session, that any viral hadith is an authentic one, and mutawatir, any mutawatir is authentic, but it is not all the authentic that are mutawatir. So there would be an authentic ahad, even though there are some of the sects like the Mu'tazila and the that is the Mu'tazila and the Jahmiyyah, the Mu'tazilites and the Jahmites, they are not considering this Hadith al-Ahad as a kind of authentic one. They don't care about it. They don't bother about Hadith al-Ahad. They just want something that is viral. Whether it is insane or it is that is out of logic, but they want a viral statement. And that's why they come with so many issues, so many thoughts, for example, that violate the guidelines of the deen. So in terms of narration, in terms of khabar, there would be authentic narration, but it is not viral. It is not viral. It doesn't come from different sources. So that's one of the issues. So ta'rifuha, its definition, this is one of the points that we are going to discuss. أقسامها باعتبار الطرق مع التمثيل, and also its classification by looking towards, by observing the pathways and along with examples. أقسامها باعتبار الرتبة مع التمثيل, its classification by observing its position along with examples. Then ما تفيده, learning outcomes, what it teaches. So these are the basic points that we are going to discuss in this session. So you say al-ahad, ma siwa al-mutawatir. It is the one that is beside mutawatir, the one that is not mutawatir, the one that is not viral. So as I mentioned, the viral narration is the one that came from different narrators. Different reporters narrated viral, that is a khabar or viral hadith. والله المستعان. وينقسم باعتبار الطرق إلى ثلاثة أقسام. It can be classified by observing the pathways or the ways إلى ثلاثة أقسام, into three classes. So it can be classified into three classes. Al-ahad, based on the ways that it come, but based on the ways of the chain of the transmission, it can be classified into three. مشهور وعزيز وغريب. So the al-ahad is classified into three subcategories. One of the category, or one of the classes of al-ahad is al-mashhur, the one that is popular. The one that is popular. So if a narration is a popular one, it can be also al-ahad. We will get to discuss the meaning of al-mashhur. So in terms of a kind of narration that is not viral, it can be classified based upon the pathway, or based on the pathway that it arrived to us, of which you can classify it into three subcategories. One of the classes of al-ahad is al-mashhur, the one that is popular. And we have al-aziz. the peculiar or unfamiliar, and there is al-garib. That is the one that is al-garib. Al-garib is can be regards to unfamiliar or unpeculiar. That is unpeculiar. So there is al-aziz, afwan, al-mashhur, the one that is popular, and al-aziz, the one that is famous, and then that is al-garib, the one that is unfamiliar, or the one that is peculiar. So these are the basic classes. I will discuss one after the other of these classifications. Then, if we say al-mashhur, the one that is popular, a kind of narration that is popular, but it is not viral, ما رواه ثلاثة فأكثر ولم يبلغ حد التواتر. It is the one that three individuals or many individuals reported that, but it doesn't reach to the level of al-mutawatir. It doesn't reach to the specification of mutawatir. We know mutawatir is a kind of viral narration that came in different stages. The one that came in different, that is our reports. We get to realize one of the hadiths, من كذب علي متعمدا فليتبوأ مقعده من النار. Almost around 60 Sahaba, almost around 60 companions reported this. A kind of narration that was reported for around 60 individuals reported that it is considered as a kind of mutawatir. But if a kind of narration is reported by 3 individuals, or the one that is reported by more than 3 individuals, but not to the level of viral. Narration, it is not viral, it doesn't become viral. So if the kind of report is not viral, so you can also classify it. So it can be a kind of popular narration, but it is not viral. We know, like in case of like infection and diseases, we know COVID-19 is a viral one. It became viral, but there are some of the popular diseases and infections which are not viral, but they are popular, like Lassa fever, and like for example, or like rabies, for example. It is a kind of popular one. It is popular, people knows about it, but it's not viral. But for COVID, for example, it's a kind of pandemic. So in this, you will be able to know the differences of the report or the differences of narrations. So al-mashhur is the one that is being reported by 3 individuals, but it doesn't reaches the level of mutawatir. 3 individuals or more, maybe 4, 5, or 6, or 10, for example, but it doesn't reaches to the level of al-mutawatir. In al-mutawatir, you can get a kind of narration with 40 narrators, 60 narrators, 30 narrators, or 100 narrators. So that's one of the classification. That is al-mashhur. ما رواه ثلاثة فأكثر ولم يبلغ حد التواتر. مثال, example of it, example of mashhur, a narration that is popular, that is hadith that is popular, but it is not to the level of that is al-mutawatir. قوله صلى الله عليه وسلم, the saying of the Rasul صلى الله عليه وسلم, المسلم من سلم المسلمون من لسانه ويده. A true Muslim is the one that the Muslims become free from his tongue and likewise from his hand, meaning he will not harm other individuals. So like this kind of narration, like this kind of hadith, it is a kind of popular one, but it is not viral. You can find many, that is ulama even, they did not like memorize this hadith, or they don't know about it even. You can get some of the, that is some of the people, they don't know about it, but it is popular, for example. So likewise, but it is not at the level of al-mutawatir. Al-Muslimu man salib al-Muslimuna bil-lisanihi wa yadihi. A true Muslim is the one that the Muslims are free from his tongue or from his hand. He will not harm them by his tongue, or he will utter a kind of evil statement. He will not defame anyone without, so that is without, just that is without, he will not harm anyone with his tongue, or to accuse anybody with a kind of false accusation, or to insult person, or to castigate a lie towards someone. Neither to use his hands to harm other person, or to carry something, obstacle, or for example, or a wood or weapon, for example, to harm other person. If a person does that, for example, without him being an authority, just as a lay person, he use his tongue, for example, or he take his that is hand to harm other person. What he does is not part of the teachings of the deen, and does it. So this is one of the point that we should try as such to understand. With this regard, we will be able to know one of the basic teachings of the deen, that you should not harm other person. And this is one of the statements of the Rasul. Where are the people today? Where are the Muslims today? How are they negating or they are avoiding this kind of that is our vital teaching? The Rasul said that Muslim Muslimun min lisanihi wa yadihi. And that's the reason why none of the pious predecessors, they said that al-amru bil ma'ruf, that is our take place, but without using a kind of silah. Allah musta'an. If a person is not an authority. So the authority, the government are the one in charge, are the one that are responsible for that. For example, even for an interrogation, you are not required to interrogate person. You are just as a common person, as a common man, as a layman, evaluating people on the street, for example. You are not required to interrogate anybody unless if you are an authority. If you are a security, if you are a government official, you can interrogate by the permission of the government. Unless if that particular person is a criminal. So a criminal, you can, that is you can observe him, you can that is interrogate him, for example. But for the interrogation, specifically the most authentic saying by the righteous predecessors, you are not to do that if you are not authority, if you are not responsible for that. And this is some of the issues that are causing harm in the community. So people should become free from that is out of your tongue or out of your hand. Do not use your organ to harm them. This is one of the example of al-mashhur. So by this we will be able to know the example of mashhur. This hadith is a kind of popular one, but it is not viral. If you go to some of the books, for example, you will not get this kind of hadith, for example, some of the books of hadith. But it is a kind of popular narration, but it is not viral. So this is one of the example for it. Wal-azizu, al-aziz, the one that is famous. A narration that is famous, it is not popular and it is not viral, but it is famous. For example, I give an example of Adolf Hitler. He is a famous person in the Tariq, like Charles Darwin, for example, Erasmus Darwin. People like, for example, all this you know that they are famous, like even today, for example. So there is a kind of narration that can become famous, but not popular and not viral. For example, like the case of Johnny Depp, for example, and that is the case of Amber. You see, the case become famous, or for example, or famous, or you can say popular, for example, but it is not like viral in all of the places, all of the continents, for example. So this is how to classify the narrations, and by this you will be able to, that is whether it can be regarded as so, that is hukum or not. So based on the level, based on the position, based on the classification, you will be able to know the strength of that narration in establishing a law or judgment or implementing that is a law. So these are some of the points that we have to observe in evaluating narrations. So this one of the classes of al-ahad. The رواه اثنان فقط is the one that two individuals narrated. There is a kind of report of two individuals. Like for example, only two journalists narrated that incident. So that would be considered as famous. It is popular, kind of famous but not popular. And likewise, you would come across some of the news, for example, or headlines from some of the news channels. Maybe two news channels only broadcasted that news, for example, but it is not disseminated to other platforms. So you can classify that as famous, and by that you will be able to know how to react. So today, if something became viral, the more viral it become, the more you will see reactions. And the more popular it becomes, the more you will see reactions, the more famous it is. That's how you will see the reactions of the people. So it is what it is. That's how it is. You have to observe the classification. Aziz is the one that is termed as exalted, or you can say famous, but it is not popular, neither viral. So if two individuals or two companions reported the hadith, that is known as Al-Aziz, it is a famous. Like maybe Abu Hurairah and Abdullah ibn Umar are the only Sahaba narrated that, so that is termed as Al-Aziz, the one that is famous. Suppose for example, it is only Abu Hurairah, Abdullah ibn Umar and Abdullah ibn Abbas reported that. So that is to be considered as what? It will be considered as al-mashhur, because three or more, it is al-mashhur, the one that is popular. Al-Aziz, the one that is famous. The one that is famous, like two reporters narrated that. So based on this kind of parameters, we will be able to know how to react to some of the incident. And that's why today the media is playing with our mind, for example. And that's why if you come across a particular person that you think he would react to something, and he did not react to that, maybe he has this kind of knowledge. But it doesn't mean that if you did not see me reacting to some of the incident, for example, that it doesn't it means that I classify it in such a way. It might be that I did that, or I consider that that's the reason why I did not react. And you should know there's the way to verify information. It doesn't mean that you are just an eye observer, that your narration will be considered, for example, or will be disseminated, or will be broadcasted. No, there are some of the parameters that has to be perfect in order to verify whether it is authentic or not. Even if it is authentic, it is based on how it came. If it is a kind of viral one, many people, many reporters, then it is a kind of authentic to the highest level. And if, for example, like three reporters or more narrated that, then it's a kind of popular one. It can be broadcasted. It can be considered as an authentic. Suppose if it is a kind of narration that came from two reporters, that is considered as famous. It is not only one person that reported that. So that will be considered as famous. And by that, it can be also considered or regarded as authentic. So based on that, you would be able to know the classification. But in this regard, there is hadith which is a kind of flimsy one, a kind of weak one, da'if, which come from the report of two individuals, or it come from the report of three individuals, for example, or less than that. So it doesn't mean that al-ahad is authentic. No, al-mutawatir is authentic. But al-ahad can be authentic or not authentic. As I mentioned earlier, a kind of mutawatir, any mutawatir is authentic, but it is not any authentic that is mutawatir. We should take note of this kind of principle or this kind of theory. Allah understand. Any mutawatir is authentic, but not that is any authentic hadith that is mutawatir. I think you get the point. So by this we will be able to understand what we are discussing here. So that the last classification, or before that, let us give a kind of example as how also we mention one of the example of the hadith that you can, hadith of which you can term it as a kind of famous one, that is al-aziz, but it is not, that is a mashhur. Like the saying of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, قوله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى أكون أحب إليه من ولده ووالده والناس أجمعين. والناس أجمعين. Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam mentioned this hadith. This hadith is a famous one. Almost you can say many people knows about it. But it is not a kind of popular one. It is not a kind of viral one. Rasulullah said, one of you will not become a true believer unless if I become more beloved to him than his children, than his parent, and to the entire humanity, for example. So this is how the Rasulullah is in our midst, for example. According to the value or the dignity of the Rasulullah, the Rasulullah is more beloved to the believers than themselves, than their family, and their children. And that's the reason why you should know the kind of word you should utter against the Rasulullah. As I keep mentioning this kind of issues, different individuals, different personalities from the past, for example, or the current personalities that we are having from the scholars, researchers, from the scientists, from the leaders. You should know how to approach them. You should know how to communicate with respect to their dignity. According to our deen, you are not required to insult any leader. Unless in Ma'asiyah. Even in Ma'asiyah, you are not required to, that is to insult him. This is a kind of consensus from the ulama. You are not even to disobey that particular leader, even if it is in Ma'asiyah, for example. But the Ma'asiyah, there's a kind of discussion here. As how it came in an authentic hadith. لا طاعة لمخلوق في معصية الخالق. There is no obedience to makhluk, an entity of creation, في معصية الخالق, in the disobedience of the, in disobeying the creator. So with this kind of authentic narration, based on this, if it is ma'asiyah, you cannot obey a person in ma'asiyah. But the issue of insult, for example, to insult him is something different. For example, there is a difference between disobedience and insult. Like, for example, someone asks you to do this, and you said no. And someone asks you to do this, and you insulted him. So the two scenarios differs, for example. So likewise, you are not required to insult anybody or to mention a kind of defamation saying without proof and evidences, for example. So the personality of the Rasul is very, very important. According to the believers, he is more beloved to themselves, more than their family, more than the humanity itself. And that's the reason why anything that touches his personality, many people will react to it. And that's it. If you take, like, for example, there are many people that are famous to you, for example. Suppose, for example, you would blackmail a person like Justin Bieber, for example. You know that particular person is a kind of person that is famous, is a popular person. Or, for example, Michael Jackson, for example. You know, these individuals, they are like famous and their contents are viral. So if you try to criticize such individuals, they have followers, they have also fanatics. They can retaliate, they can stand in order to defend them. So how about a person that he is not a common person, but rather a messenger? So that's the reason why there will be reaction, definitely. The more you touch the Rasulullah, there will be reaction. And at that moment, if a person is a viral person, meaning a person is a famous person or a popular person, if he has followers, if you try to criticize that particular person, people would come to react or to defend him, for example, and you will not be able to control everyone. So that's the reason the better option is for you not to cross that boundary. It's a kind of line that's not supposed to be crossed. And as for you, for example, suppose you are admiring someone, or for example, you are with someone, or you are, for example, you are defending a particular person. Know the way to react. Do not react in a way that causes breaches the law. So that's one of the issues. We should try to balance the parameters. Rasulullah mentioned one of the authentic hadith, and one of you will not become a true believing person unless I become more beloved to him than his children, than his parent, and than the humanity as such. You know, the higher issue that we are discussing, like the issue of humanity, but the Rasulullah is more valuable than humanity itself, and that's the reason why you see many people can react in a kind of way that you did not expect. So the better option is for you not to, not to criticize someone, not to attack the personality of a person without that is valid evidence of whosoever he is. Most especially if the person is if that particular person is a person of authority. What kind of leader, for example? Also, Rasulullah was a leader in the community. The entire humanity is among the messengers. Even himself with his position, he mentioned the position that we should consider him even better than humanity. But he says that, La taturuni, do not over-exaggerate regarding my position. There is no over-exaggeration. But people can react. So that's how it is. If something becomes violent, you should know that there will be consequences. For example, whether it will come with good result or a negative one. So anything has positive and negative. Even the drugs, for example, the medications that we consume or that we take, for example, today, it has the positive effect and it has the side effect. So if something becomes viral, it may come up with positive reactions or negative reaction. If something is popular, it can become a positive one or negative one. Allah musta'an. Like what, like for example, the information that came recently of this person, Justin Bieber. He was, it was narrated that he was infected or he's suffering with a kind of debilitating disorder. The disorder is not a kind of viral one or it is not a kind of famous one or popular one. But he is a popular person. So the content can come with positive reaction or negative reaction. As I see, many people, they are praying to such person. So likewise, if you want to speak about someone, if you want to speak about a particular alim or muhaddith, or you want to speak about a particular da'iyah, for example, or you want to speak about a particular talib ilmi, know the way to put your points, know the way that is to make the commentary. Otherwise, it will create a lot of problems to you, yourself, and also to your community, and also to humanity at large. So that's some of the issues that we should be able to understand with respect to narration, stories, or for example, news. Allah musta'an. So let us proceed. Well, Garib. If we're talking about peculiar, that is unfamiliar narration. The narration is unfamiliar. It is unfamiliar by many, that is ruwat, for example, or narrators. For many reporters, they don't know about it. Like these days, for example, something can happen, or you can have an information from a particular person. If you contact another person, he would say he don't know about it. Suppose you call someone from the exact location or another location, you get that information. He will say that he don't know about it. So that is unfamiliar. That is classified as a kind of peculiar information or unfamiliar information. So Marwah Wahidun Faqat is a kind of narration that a single reporter reported that. A single narrator reported that. So it cannot be put that a single narrator or Sahabi narrated that. It is termed as al-Gharib. And you will see there are some of the hadiths that are that is Gharib, for example. And that's why the books that are written in the hadiths, they are known as Kitab al-Igrab or Kutub al-Igrab, for example, and such a way, or Gharib al-Hadith, for example, all this. So if narration is unfamiliar or it's a kind of peculiar narration, it is considered as al-ahad. It is not valid. So by this, you have to react to it. You have to implement a rule or make a judgment based on based on the report, because a single person can. Suppose, for example, someone just came to you momentarily, unexpectedly, he says something happened in a social place. So since that he is a single person, you should not overreact. You should just react in a proper manner. He is a single person. So what you are supposed to do not react first. Try to verify. Call another person in that particular region, for example. Like something can happen in your country or in your nation. Some of the people they would have an information from another place that something happened in social place or in social nation. Instead of them to verify, to call the people that they know they are in that particular place, they will not. They will just broadcast that particular information. And that's the reason why things are becoming difficult to us, for example, or to the people today. So there is need for verification in everything. And through the verification, you'll be able to classify. So if a single reporter or a single news channel or a single person broadcast something or he posted something in the social media platforms, before reacting to it, before making a comment or placing a kind of like button, for example, or before you share it, or before you retweet it, try as such to verify if it is something that is related to the public matters or related to a particular personality, most especially if that particular person is a leader, for example, in his community, or if that particular person is a popular person or famous person, or is among the ulama or student of knowledge. So because there are some of the so-called ulama, for example, of the 21st century, and the ulama ilm, they don't know the issues of mustalah al-hadith, they don't know about the issues of jarh wa ta'adil, they are missing this kind of points. The moment they see an information related to one popular person or one famous person, they would just react to it. They would begin to share it. They would begin to and if there's a kind of evaluation, thorough evaluation, they'll get to realize what they have done is wrong, for example, and regulation come. أيها الذين آمنوا إن جاءكم فاسق بنبأ فتبينوا أن تصيبوا قوما بجهالة فتصبحوا على ما فعلتم نادمين. And that's how it is. Or you believe whatsoever, if a kind of indecent person, if a kind of indecent person, إن جاءكم فاسق, if a criminal, a kind of transgressor, evil person, or unknown person brought you with an information, with a kind of information, a kind of narration, فَتَبَيَّنُوا, try as such to verify, فَتَثَبَّتُوا, try as such to investigate, and تُصِيبُوا قَوْمًا بِجَهَالَةٍ, otherwise you can harm other people unknowingly, وَتُصْبِحُوا عَلَى مَا فَعَلْتُمْ نَادِمِينَ, and you would get awake on what you have done while regretting. In order to avoid regulation, in order to avoid regretting after doing something, try as such to verify, try as such to investigate before reacting to it, before making a judgment on it. The issues are getting worse now. You will see something about, for example, even if he is an artist, for example, or he is a kind of celebrity, do not just react to the information you listen about him. Try as such to verify, try as such to confirm, try as such to investigate. By this you will be able to know the naked facts. And that's it. Otherwise, things will become difficult unto yourself, and it will become difficult to your society. A single word that a person would utter can cause trouble to himself, and likewise to his community, to his society, and at large to his nation entirely. They would say, so person from so nation, from so country, he has done this. If this evil act, they would blackmail him with that. So know the consequences. The utterances are like poisons. The utterances are like a kind of arrow, for example. I mean, a metal arrow, Allah musta'an. You don't understand it in another way. If it goes, it can harm many. And if care is not taken, it can reverse. So the reverse would be the case. Try as such to verify. If it is a single information you come across by a single reporter, that is al-gharib. It is unfamiliar. is a factual narration. So like this, you will be able to know how to react to it. What you have to do before reacting, do not make the judgment. If you just heard from a single person, before making a judgment, before reacting to it, try as such to consult other people that are related to that particular information, or that are in that area, or that are in that locus, or in that particular locality. When you heard from another person, so the report has become two. So now the narration become al-aziz, meaning it is a famous one, because you heard it from more than one person. And if you had the information from like 3 reporters, or more than that, or 3 news channels, or from 3 journalists, or more than that, then it is a popular one. You can react based on the type and the kind of information. This is how to deal with this with the matters of narration, stories, news headlines, and other issues. And this we have been taught in the ilm al-hadith, but people are not giving heed to this. And that's the reason even the student of knowledge supposed to know about this. Otherwise, they will create trouble to themselves. You will cause trouble to yourself, to your society. You may spend your whole life going into court cases, going into the court of laws, where you cause trouble to your society, your community, to your people. Know what you are, know your reaction. At times, the utterances are the evil ones, are the poisons. And at times, the reactions also are the poisons. So what you have to do, you should say the right words at the right time, in the right place. And react to the right words at the proper time and in a proper place. If something happening somewhere else and you decide to react, for example, in a place that has nothing to do with that kind of information, then it will become a kind of hazard to that particular place, for example. So we should know how to deal with this kind of issues. Allah musta'an. Misal, example of a kind of garib. If you say strange, it's a layman language, but in the field of hadith we consider it as peculiar narration, or a kind of that is unfamiliar narration. Allah musta'an. قوله صلى الله عليه وسلم, he said his statement. Like this one. Actions are according to the intentions. Actions are but by intention. To every human. وإنما لكل امرئ ما نوى. To any human, to any particular individual, is what he has intended. So ever would be your intention, that would be your reward in the sight of the Almighty. So the Almighty looks into the heart. Other humans may not look into your heart. They may not observe your iman, for example, or your taqwa, for example, or your khushu', or your tadammu, or tazallul, or for example, your al-wara, for example. Or as they will not consider that when you say something which is unpleasant to them, you can just react. But that's for the Almighty. He looks into the heart. إن الله لا ينظر إلى أجسامكم ولا إلى صوركم ولكن ينظر إلى قلوبكم وأعمالكم. The Almighty is not looking at your attire, neither to your figure. But what He looks is your heart and your actions. So in case of humans, they judge based on what they viewed, what they visualize, what they smell, what they recognize, what they senses. They may not consider your maybe personality being you. So Allah, if you know you are a person of authority, or you have a good personality in your community, try as such to know the way to your order. Some words become influence poisons to the heart of those who uttered or does to the body of those who uttered such words. And some of the words become impudence poisons to the body of the people who listen to those kind of statements or such kind of words. So likewise, so intention is a kind of mind thoughts, for example, that you have the desire to do something or you did something due to that. And this is one of the trouble. If you are listening about some of the cases, like in the courts, for example, someone would come and he would say, I did not do it willingly or intentionally. So how can you consider that as a valid reason? Although there are some of the issues to look, for example, like his personality, his quality, his qualification, his license can help him in dealing, that's in evaluating him or making a judgment related to his concern. But just common intention cannot be considered as a valid reason. You mentioned evil way, or you criticize someone, and you are given a kind of reason that you did not do it intentionally. That will not be considered. Allah musta'an. So what the Almighty consider that actions, the result of actions are based according to the intentions. And whomsoever committed an action, to every human, to every individual, to any individual, is what he has intended. I may not have the complete information related to your intention of doing so action, for example, but there are some of the parameters to evaluate in order to know whether you do it willingly or intentionally. Like for example, when someone is driving Bugatti or Ferrari, for example, and he crushed someone or he had a kind of accident. So how can you evaluate that he crushed that particular person intentionally or willingly or without that is his willingness or without his intention? He did not intend to do that. So some of the parameters like the speed he is driving with, like for example his license, for example, all those kind of parameters would be evaluated in order to have a kind of judgment in such cases before the acting. And that's why you would come across some of the cases. A person would crush someone with his vehicle on the street and people will react. They will try to take away the life of that driver. This is not the way to react unless if you have valid reason. And even if you have valid reason, you are not the authority. Some of the issues are with respect to the authorities. The authorities are the ones to know whether he is going with a high speed or no. Or he got that particular person intentionally or not intentionally. Did he have license or not? Driving license or not? You as a local person or a lay person, you will not be able to know whether he has driving license or not, or he is going with a high speed or not. Unless hukuma. So these are some of the issues that we should try as such to know with respect to this. Like this hadith, إنما الأعمال بالنيات وإنما لكل امرئ ما نوى فإنه لم يروه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إلا عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله عنه, because nobody narrated this hadith unless Umar رضي الله عنه from the Rasul صلى الله عليه وسلم. ولا عن عمر إلا القمة من أبي وقاص. From Umar nobody narrated that but Alqamah. Alqamah is a tabi'i. ولا عن علقمة إلا محمد بن إبراهيم التيمي. Muhammad bin Ibrahim al-Taymi is the one that narrated that riwayah from Alqamah. So if you look towards the chain of the transmission, towards the isnad, you will see it's a kind of uniformic isnad. It's a kind of uniformic. It's not a kind of polymorphic. It is a kind of unimorphic. So, وَلَنْ Muhammad إِلَّا يَحْيَى بن سعيد الأنصاري. Nobody narrated from Muhammad bin Ibrahim al-Taymi but Yahya bin Sa'id al-Ansari. وكلهم من التابعين, and all of these individuals, they are from tabi'in. But where is the source? The narration of the Sahabi. Who is the Sahabi? Umar radiallahu anhu. He is the only one that narrated that. And that narration is an authentic one. Because all the Isnad, all the people in the Rijal, they are authentic ones. They are people of merit. So you see, the report of a single person cannot just be considered as authentic or not authentic, unless while looking in such to this kind of parameters. ثم رواه أن يحيى خلق كثير. So after Yahya bin Sa'id al-Ansari, many many narrators, many rijal, many people narrated that from him. So secondly, وينقسم باعتبار رتبة إلى 5 أقسام. It can be classified based on the merit, based on the position, into 3 subcategories. So likewise also, a uniformic narration, a kind of al-ahad, can also be subdivided into 3 categories. It can be considered as sahihul lizatihi, based on the merit. It can be authentic in its normality, in its nature it is authentic. And also, it can become authentic due to another narration, due to another information, due to another riwayah, or due to another matin can support that narration to become authentic one. So likewise, وَحَسَنُ لِذَاتِهِ, and there is also حَسَنُ لِذَاتِهِ, a kind of satisfactory narration in its normality. And there is a kind of satisfactory narration due to another narration. Suppose a kind of person comes, you don't know his identity, for example, you don't know his absolute personality. Maybe according to what you see, he's a good person, he's a person of virtues, but you don't have confirmation in that particular person. So when he tells you something, you cannot just consider this as authentic. You can take it, but if another narration comes with the same statement mentioned by that particular person, you would consider that as a kind of satisfactory one based on another narration, or a kind of authentic one based on another narration. وَالضَّعِيفِ, and a flimsy one, a weak narration. Maybe the reporter, he is having a kind of deficiency in his character, in his conduct, in his moral decorum. So based on that, you will be able to consider that report as a kind of flimsy one. Like today, for example, you would come across some of the social platforms. They would post something, later on they would rebuke it. So if a particular person, I would like to speak on these issues because someone recently asked a question related to that. So today we don't have, like, for example, it is not like not in the matters of hadith or riwayah or dirayah. How about in the matters of social media, like for example social platforms? Maybe someone from another planet or another continent or nation, he would post something. How can you react to that? How can you deal with this kind of issues? How you would do is that when someone posts someone, he is not your friend, you don't even know him, for example, or you don't know much more about that particular news channel or that particular social media platform. What you have to do, wait for a while. When you see someone reposting that, or someone reposted that, when you see a repost, then you can make a comment, or you can click a like button, thumbs up or thumbs down, for example, or you can even there is a comment, for example, or to avoid that. So before reacting, try as such to verify. So it's how to deal with this kind of issues. Otherwise, you can repost something, or you can share something, and later on you would regret on doing so. Like for me also, I experience this kind of issues. I discovered that there are many accounts with my name, for example. I'm not the one that created that social media accounts, for example. So how can you verify whether it is mine or not? You have to consult me first. For example, any information that someone shared on that such kind of platforms can be a kind of fake one. So there is a fake hadith, for example, also. In the previous session, I talked about one of the statement, or I discussed about one of the statement of one person, the issue of hadith forgery. Allah understand. Yes, what he says, there is a kind of issue with regards to that, but his statement is totally different with the issue of forgery in terms of ilm al-hadith, for example, or the issue of da'if, for example, or da'ifa, for example, or ad-da'f. When there is a da'ifa, there is a kind of ad-da'f, for example. So with such, you will be able to know how to react, how to deal with this kind of issues. Even if it is hadith, even if it is a kind of religious information. Even if he is an alim, he posted something, he wrote something and he posted. You are not just to, if it is related to something that is of current affairs, you are not just to repost. Otherwise, when he posted something or he posted something which is not a fact, he will regret, and you also regret also. And that's why you would see people are taking out their posts in social media. They would post something later on when some information become apparent to them, they will take it away. So that's how the matters are. It's better if you post something and it is not the fact. When you come across, when you realize it is not the fact, don't defend it. Take it down. Take it down is better. Otherwise, the more you leave it, the more it becomes popular. The more it becomes famous, the more it becomes popular, the more it becomes viral. So negative information harm so many individuals. Like today that we are having the advent of technology, a kind of fake video can be created, a kind of fake voice can be created, for example, in order to tarnish the image of a person, or for example, to like blue mask a particular person, for example, or to praise a particular person. So you should know how to deal with this issue. There is need for verifications. Otherwise, we will be going into difficulties, problems that we will not get, will not reach to the end of those kind of problems. There will be complications, for example. But if there is verification always and classification, then it will become easy for us. Like in science, we have taxonomy. Through the taxonomy, matters become easy for us. We have the issues of mnemonics, the abbreviation. Matters become easy for the people. And that's even the reason why there is Mustalah al-Hadith, the terminologies. As I mentioned in the beginning, you cannot just take a particular terminology to apply it in the field. Like now, if I'm talking about, for example, science, or I'm talking about, if I'm to deliver a talk, there's a talk, for example, with respect to medicine or with respect to science, for example, I know the kind of words I would use. I know the kind of information I would present, for example. Suppose if I want to discuss related to the issues of, like for example, religion, I know the kind of information that I have to present, for example. So that's it. So even if he's an alim, he posts something, try as such to verify before reacting. Like it happened in one of the incidents, a car accident, automobile accident happened. And there were casualties. There were casualties there. Some of the people, they just see that the person, there are some of the differences. The person, the casualty shows a kind of differences. So the people in that particular locality where it happened, they just decided to react to that. As I came across another incident just of recent. A particular person was riding an autobike. He carried one woman. They just had an accident, and some of the people, they just decided to react to what had happened because the woman died. It was narrated that a car crushed that woman. You see, that happened unintentionally. He did not intend to do that. But the people of that environment, the way they react is inhumane. They decided to attack that particular person without verification, without knowing the entire incident, without knowing the entire story. So that there is no problem with an intense reaction, but if you follow the decorum, you follow the rules, the policies. These are the policies. We have to live under policies. If we neglect the policies, we avoid the policies and the rules, for example, would experience a lot of difficulties. So there is need for someone to abide by the law of his environment. We should know that. Otherwise, you will not enjoy the environment will be unpleasant to you. So that's why one of the wise men was saying, لكل مكان مقال ولكل زمان رجال لكل رجال زمان ولكل زمان رجال. So you should know. So based on this, our today's discussion was related to non-violent hadith, which is al-ahad. So it is classified into al-mashhur, al-aziz, and al-gharib. So likewise, even al-gharib is sub-classified into so many classes. So we know narrations can become, a narration can be a viral one, can be a popular one, it can become, it can be a famous one, it can be a kind of unfamiliar one, or peculiar one. So based on this, you will know how to deal with the matters and the way to understand the social media, the news channel. At times, someone would mention something that the social news channel broadcasted social information, and we verify what he mentioned is totally opposite to what they broadcasted. And if these issues are happening, then there will be conflicts. The conflict that will not come to the end of it. We should try as much to verify the issue. You should know something. You should know even the terminologies. For example, I can say my words in idioms, or in idiomatic expression, or I can use metaphor or figure of speech. A person that doesn't know that, he can react to it in other way. But if I mention a straightforward words, for example, like let me give an example. If I said the dog in the family, I mean like the criminal in the family. Someone that doesn't know this, he may understood. So likewise, some of the reporters, they use this. They use this kind of idioms, for example, in reporting cases or information. So we have so many issues that we have to consider before making a judgment, before reacting to any information. And that's it. So I think with this viewpoint of our discussion, we are going to stop here. So in our next discussion, we are going to start with the discussion about the classification of al-ahad based on its merits, whether it is sahih or da'if, or sahih li-ghayrihi or hasan li-ghayrihi. So based on that, we will be able to discuss. Under da'if, we will discuss about mawdu', for example, all such kind of classifications. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.